All right, good morning, everybody. We are here to have our educational web series around episode 23, which is building a basic crystal report in Sage 100. So we have Larry Cox, who's going to present to us today and kind of walk us through that process of building a report and kind of just a simple agenda today. And we're going to kind of, where do we start? How to open up a blank crystal report. There's a couple different ways to get started, but definitely one of the topics that we'll spend some time on is data and the fact of where to find it, and sort of the fact that you can't really break it. You can definitely manipulate it incorrectly, but you can't break it. So it's just kind of a topic. We're gonna show you some navigation of crystal reports and the buttons that are in there and what they do. Again, this is a high level kind of simple basic report, and we're gonna walk through the building of that report, and then we're gonna add it to the Sage menu, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Larry. Larry, you can share your screen and walk us through how to build a basic report.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Cox. I've been a Sage consultant for a few decades at least, and Crystal's a very powerful tool we use on a regular basis as well as our clients. I think they picked me because I'm somewhat of an innovator at the firm. I know I spent 3 decades in martial arts developing new ways to block punches with my face. So anyway, just kidding. So anyway, what we're going to do is first thing I want to discuss is Crystal Reports is bundled with your Sage as a program. Okay, and if I open up the Sage, you'll see Crystal Reports is right there. Now, Crystal does not automatically install when you do a workstation install client on your desktop. So you want to make sure that is installed on the desktop that you're going to be working on, so that it's available. So it doesn't necessarily, if it's not there, it needs installed, and there's a separate install within the install disks that come bundled with Sage. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. In the meantime, while that's launching, I'm going to pop over here to Sage. And one of the things that is fundamental in developing a Crystal report is to know what data you want and where is it. Okay, the data file structure of Sage is important to know, in that, for example, if you think about a regular Sage invoice, there's kind of like the header tab and then the lines tab. The header tab is actually a file in itself, okay? And then there's a detail file that is actually the lines for the invoice. So in the example I'm going to have, we're actually going to have 2 separate files that we're pulling into that Crystal report. The way to determine what files you need when you're going to do a Crystal report is there's actually, under the Sage interface, you'll see that there's actually, under the information center, there's file layouts and program information that you can launch that's got a whole lot of information about. If I click on file layouts and I go to, we're going to be looking at accounts receivable, I could go in and look at what particular, and we're going to be working with AR invoice history detail. I can click on that and I can see what particular individual fields are contained within that file. There's a ton of information in here. I'll be honest, you can find it on your own, but quite honestly, the easiest thing might be just to pop somebody here at Matrix a an email and say, hey, I'm interested in this. What files do I need? Or what files do I need to put into my Crystal report? We're always happy to answer those type of questions because, again, it's where fields are located within the files. We're in this stuff every day. And if you're not, it can be a little difficult to find which particular files that you want to work with. The other thing I do want to mention is the Crystal report is actually a report writer, and it does not write into the Sage data. So when you're working on the report, you don't need to worry. I entered something, I corrupted the database or something posted back into the database. That doesn't happen. It's strictly a one-way street. So you really can't hurt the data. You can mess your own report up, but you can't mess the data up. Okay. So if I go back to the Crystal that I launched, this is the basic screen that you start when you're going to do a Crystal report. Okay, so right up at the very top, you'll see that there is the create a new report. Okay, and first thing it's going to want to do is ask, well, what database are you trying to connect to? So I'm going to click on the create new connections. And you'll see the ODBC, which is the connector into the Sage database. And might want to write this down. This is the one. SOTA 90 is the name of the ODBC connection into the Sage 100 data. Okay, so I'm going to select that. And this actually can start into a wizard. Say that the Crystal is smart enough that I can start keying information in and move through a wizard that will actually help you build a report. You can do that on your own, step through that. It would ask you for a login and a password, but again, that's something the wizard's going to guide you. I'm no wizard, so I'm gonna do it manually so that you can see how to manually do it. Okay, so I'm going to click finish, and the first thing it's going to do is ask me to log again, kind of like that what the wizard wanted to do, which was log into the Sage database. So I'm doing that, and then you'll see down below here that the ODBC driver SOTA 90 is looking into the Sage database and finding all the different types of files that are available within that. So what I want to work with is AR invoice history. I'm going to write a little report looking into invoice history, which is probably the most common analysis that customers want to do. So I'm going to select my invoice history detail. And remember, I think that's the lines tab on your invoices. And I'm going to select that table. And then I'm going to select the invoice header table to put that in there. Okay. So what I've just done is I've said, hey, I want to access these two tables. So I'm going to click finish, and then it launches kind of the basic Crystal report that's got a lot of screen, that's got a lot of different options and information on it. There's a number of navigation buttons across the top. I'm going to go over those. There's also design tab, okay, which is actually where you place the fields and the headings and all the things of what you're doing on the report. And then there's the preview tab that actually shows you what the report will look like, okay. And then over on the Field Explorer is where it actually, you can see the different databases, database files, as well as the fields available from those files. There's actually, formula fields where we can build formulas off of the fields. There's SQL expression fields if you're a SQL person that you can use that. I typically don't because I'm not really a SQL person. Parameter fields are basically, we'll show you an example of that, how to put in parameters when you start the report. The example I'm going to use is basically a date range. Running totals, you can have basic summary, which I'm going to show you, but you can also have running totals that basically keep totals based upon certain conditions. For example, if a field is, if an item field is XYZ, you can run a total, for the report of how many XYZs there are. And group name fields, I'm not going to go over that, or special fields. Although special fields does have some things you may want, they're very basic things like page 1 of 3, what's the page number, print date, types of things. So it's not really, they're just extra things that you may want to put onto your report if you would want to. All right. So now one of the key things when you're doing crystal reports is to get the linking right. If I go to links on this, you'll see that right now those two data files that I selected are not linked together. So it has no way of having the correspondence between the two files. Okay, so you have to do that, otherwise it doesn't know how to connect the fields. So what I'm going to do is left click and drag over and create a link between the invoice history detail and the invoice history header. And this is pretty critical right here, that I'm going to make it the join type is how it knows how those files are linked. In other words, if I do a left outer, I'm saying that is a many to one relationship. Okay, so what that really means is in invoice history detail, I can have many records, in other words, many lines on that invoice that correspond to one invoice number. Okay, because I'm only going to have one invoice. I'm not that has multiple detail lines to it. So that's an important thing to do. And you can actually, add more tables and do different links in there if you wish. But I'm going to stick with that for the moment. And it's going to ask a refresh because I just joined those two tables together. Now what I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about some of the buttons across the top. There is the save button. There's the open. If you have other crystal reports, sometimes you may want to open a different crystal report, and then you can kind of spy between the reports, copy a formula, that type of thing. So you can actually have multiple. It would list another report 2 up here, report 3, if you had multiple reports open. Okay, the print buttons, fairly self-explanatory. HTML preview, I'll be honest, never use that. The export button is kind of an important one, because what that allows you to do is export to different programs. And the most common one that I use, if I write a crystal report and I want to push it to Excel, I would select the Excel button. I would say I want to launch the application. When I click OK, this would push the information from the report into Excel. So that's a pretty powerful button that we use on a pretty regular basis. The format painter is if you want to copy formats like fonts or colors or stuff like that between fields. You can basically click on one field, get the formatting, and then paste it onto another field. The undo button's one of my favorites because, frequently, particularly when you're trying to align fields, since it's kind of what WYSIWYG, I guess is what they used to call it, the ability to drag fields around. Sometimes you do something you really didn't want to happen, and it's nice to have that undo button as well as a forward button. Okay, so you can move back and forth between changes that you're making. I guess there's a lot of other different buttons on here that I don't want to spend the time going over. You can see I hover over it, kind of tells you what they are. The last critical one I want to talk about is this one right here, the refresh button. So frequently, if you make a bunch of changes within a report and you want to refresh against the database, you click that button right there, the refresh button. All right, so I want to do is launch into writing a report here. So you can see that there's a section called report headers. The report header will print just at the very top of the report, not on every page. The page headers print on every report or every page. Details section is the actually we're going to be doing our work, which is actually formatting the particular lines of the report. And then you also have a report footer and a page footer. Most of the time, I don't necessarily want a print date on the page header. I put it on a page footer. I'm just left click and I can drag that print date down to the bottom. Okay, so what I want to do, just to kind of summarize, is I'll write a quick little report looking at an invoice history, looking at the items and that have been sold over a particular date range, and count up the number of items of each item that's been sold during that time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the item detail file. Okay, and I'm going to pull over, let me find it here. Okay. The item code. So I'm going to left click and drag that into the details section. Oops, I missed. Okay, see how that popped? And it automatically brought the onto the page header the title or field name with that. Okay, so the next thing I want to grab is we've wanted to analyze how many have actually shipped. So I'm going to scroll down into here and find my quantity ship field, which is right here, and I'm going to drag this over. And something else that I'm interested in, since we talked about, I wanted to know over what date range that a particular item, how many we sold under that date range. I care about the invoice date. So, but I know the invoice date, if you remember on the Sage tabs on invoice data entry, it's actually on the header tab, right? Which means it's going to be in the invoice header file, not in the detail file. So if I go here, you can see now I got the invoice date, so I can drag that over. Okay. And the last thing that I think that I'm going to be interested in is the quantity, basically the dollars, right? Maybe I'm interested in the dollars that were sold on that particular invoice. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to go to the formulas. And if I double click on that, nothing happens because I don't have any. I'm going to hit the new button at the top, and I'm just going to call this dollars, anything. I guess I can't spell too well there, and now I can go over to here, and you'll see at the top here that I've got the report field. So I know that my total dollars is going to be a function of my quantity shipped, and then it's going to use kind of the basic math functions like the asterisk sign is times. Okay, but I don't have the unit price, right? I didn't put that on the report. I could have, if I would have put it on the detail line, that would be a field up here. Don't necessarily have to. I can click here and I can go to the detail lines and I can scroll down to unit price. Okay, so now I put the quantity shipped times the unit price. Always a good idea to check to make sure if you put an invalid statement in, you can check and it'd say, hey, you know, that statement's good. So I will save that. Now you see I've got dollars over here on the right-hand side. So now I can left click and put it onto on the detail line. So now if I click on preview, this is ABC demo data with your Sage. So again, you can see it's kind of got a future date out there, and there's not all that much data in there. But you'll notice, and this is really, really common, you'll see the pound signs in there, okay? And when you get the pound signs, what that's basically saying is that I have not allocated enough space for the contents of that field. So if I go back here to click, and I basically expand that dollars field, trying to get a hold of it here, there. Now, if I go back, you'll see that's that big number, that 283,500 is now available. So you can actually get that on standard. I've had some clients have that on actually standard Sage reports that we have to go in and expand the masking on it so that you can see the full number. Okay, now let's say that again, these things are kind of out of order, right? That we've wanted to analyze kind of like by item. So what we're going to do now is do a group by item. Okay, so I'm going to left click on the item number and insert a group, and it's going to be insert detail item in ascending order. I can make it ascending, descending, your call in terms of what you want to do. I click OK, and it inserts what they call group header that's going to say what it is, and then it's going to group on them. Okay, so now if I go back to preview, you can see now it's got it grouped by the individual item number. And what we wanted was the total quantity sold. Okay, so obviously right now they're not totaled. So I can go back, I can click on the item quantity shipped and insert a summary. And you see the default is to insert a grand total. I wanted a group total. You could do a grand total as well, but grand total of items probably isn't really a meaningful number. So once I've inserted that, you'll see it pops here. And now I've got a total on the individual items. The problem with this right now is, again, it's not, this is dumping the whole data file, right? So what I want to do now is go back and put a parameter in that we can restrict the date range that we're actually looking at. So I go back over to the Field Explorer, I click on parameters, click on the new, and I'm going to type in begin date. And I have to define what type of field it is. I'm just going to say it's a date. And then I'm also going to add an ending date. So now I've got two fields that it's going, the report will prompt me for when it runs, but I need to let it know the selection criteria for those dates. So I'm going to go back up to report, and there's this wonderful thing called the selection expert. I select record. I'm going to select the invoice date, and I'm going to say is between. When I click on the fields available, you can see I could actually make it a specific date. You know, if I just wanted a report for 5/6/2025, I could select that day, but that would be kind of probably only a one-time use report. If I select begin date and end date, now it prompts. So we know that maybe I see a lot of data on there for, we'll say 5/16 to 5/21. So if I go 05/16, 2025 to 05/21, 2025. Oops, missed a. Now you'll see, now I'm only seeing those days with that date parameter. Okay. One other thing that I'd like to show you is maybe we care about on this report, we want to see the big ticket items for, or the bigger quantities first, so we're not looking for them. If we go to report, there's a thing called group sort expert. I can say top N, and I'm going to say the sum of the quantity shipped. So basically, I am asking to show, okay, show my top. You'll see I said just a certain number of records. I said 5, show me the in the order, top order. So this would show me the top 5 items that were being sold under that date range. Something also that's probably relevant, if you're writing a report and you're looking at it, you may want to see what the parameters were, or some description about what the report is. I just opened up my report header, and I'm going to insert a text box, and I'm going to say, top 5 unit sales for, and now I can go over and I can actually left click and drag a parameter field into that text field. I'll type 2 and then I'll grab my ending date. Now if I preview, now I can see that kind of a heading for what is actually in that report. I think the last thing, one other thing I want to show you before I show you how to add this report to the menu is something else. Sometimes when we're looking at this report, maybe you say, you know what, I don't necessarily want to see the detail. I just want to see the totals. If I go over here and I'm going to copy my group down to the footer so that the item code shows. Oop, I lost it. Just a second. Maybe I'll just drag it down. That's easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I left click, or excuse me, right click, and I say suppress, hide. Now, oops, I guess got rid of, just a second here. I missed something. Well, I'm missing it.
Yeah, it's gonna work because normally I kind of graze it out, so you can
Yeah,
kind
I
of tell
don't
that
know
it's
why.
suppressed.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Usually it grays out. I don't know why. There you go. There's the one thing we were joking before this of all the debacles that have happened in other people demo. If you're not trying if you don't have something work during a demo. But normally, if you right click on that and say suppress, that line, that section should suppress. But hopefully you'll forgive me on that one. The goal was to make these individual lines go away. So we're going to let that one go for the moment, and I'll scratch my head about this later in the day. So what I'm going to do now is actually put this report into the Sage. So one of the requirements is that you have to have a custom behind it when you're adding it to the Sage menu. So I'm just going to call it test. I'm going to save it to my desktop and save it. And I'm going to go into Sage. Under modules, library master. A thing called report manager. Again, it's under library master setup, report manager. And it asks, I want it right down there at the bottom. It shows you, I want to add a report to a menu, and it launches a wizard. I'm going to click next. Where do I want to add it? We'll add it to the accounts receivable module. Click next. Then where that file is located is would locate under accounts receivable. There would be a section called custom reports down here.
Well, we really appreciate everyone coming out today. Let me share my screen. If you need anything from us, you can reach out to Larry or myself on our phone number or just on the screen, and we'd love to help you if you're trying to build your own custom reports. And if it's complicated, we'll get Dave and Sue involved.